Sense about certainly the church can do much more given the crisis that we're in and given the challenges that we are facing. Are we doing enough? Absolutely not. And I think there are a variety of factors, that contribute to that. One, I think for us, in South LA, there has been a transition, in both the demographic as well as the dynamics, in the black church. But I think the main question, becomes, do we define the black church by way of ethnicity, or do we define the black church by way of ethos? I think, looking at those two, I tend to, look at the black church, by way of ethos, because the black church was founded out of a sense of segregation and discrimination, and so that church then took on a particular theological ethos in terms of how it will represent God, and how it will represent itself and position itself within the community. And so given that there are certain principles that make up the black church, and not just the skin color of a person or the ethnicity of a person. And so having said that, I dare then say that we are right now, I believe, at a critical juncture as the church, in terms of how is it that we, one, reposition ourselves for a more progressive and prophetic role. How do we retool ourselves and equip ourselves for dealing with the challenges of today, and to really try and see, how can we learn from the principles used, in the past, and leverage those principles for relevant, strategic, and innovative implementation, given the challenge that we are facing, today. So. So we are, not just in crisis, I think, as a, as a community, but also, as a community of faith, called the church. And now is the time for us to see how we need to, redefine ourselves, reposition ourselves, and retool ourselves to be able to re-engage, a community, in effective and relevant ways.
Well, Pastor Sauls, that's so important. Going through the transition, meeting the challenges, and kind of in some ways kind of a refashioning and reshaping. Unfortunately, what happened when we came out of the 60s, and we had the activist, in-your-face activist ministers. We saw them all the time on national TV, making news, and actually changing public policy. The sad thing is some, and I don't want to overgeneralize this, I have to be clear on this, some churches did slip into the prosperity theme, going after money. Some churches slipped into, we're not going to talk about social and political issues, we're not going to get into engagement, that was another time and another place. Some, again, I'm very careful, some churches got into, we don't name any names, got into the thinking that our mission is only one thing: saving souls. And, Pastor Sauls, I won't mention any names, but I remember a situation where going to one church, and there were individuals out there that were panhandling. There were individuals out there selling wares. Individuals out there that essentially were homeless and destitute. And you had some of the congregation walking by saying, "Get out of here," calling the police, "Get away from here." Yeah. And I thought to myself, now, my reading of the Bible, didn't Jesus Christ, didn't he feed the, and clothe the, and he didn't walk around, or ride around in a silken, garments and a camel? So again, not making light of that, but the fact is, part of that challenge is really in that engagement, and more particularly, Pastor Sauls, let's talk a little bit about Home Methodist. How practically are you making that transition in terms of dealing with the needs in the community and those challenges? Yeah,
let me quickly respond to the first part that you mentioned. During any, as you know, and I have a great deal of respect for you and Pedro, and the work that you guys continue to do. in any resistance movement, there's always the strategy by the oppressor or those in power for co-option. And so I think, a critical question that we have to ask ourselves today is, all of the resistance that we did in the past, all of the marching and all of the sacrifices we made in the past, was it for inclusion into a system that is bankrupt, a system that really is outdated, or was it to transform the system? I think that is given where we are and what we're going through, I think that's the question that a lot of young people, including myself, are asking. If we've come a long way, but we still have so long to go. So the question then becomes, those who were on the front lines, grateful for them, respect them a lot, but I think the question, is, was that all to try and, get what the man had, to try and live where the man lived, to try and, or was it to try and get our piece of the pie, or to try and change the ingredients of the pie? And I think those are questions that we ought to ask ourselves, and to see how we can examine that around setting ourselves up to see how can we engage in movement building from now forward. If it's only for inclusion, I dare say to you, we're not going to move too far ahead. But if it is for transformation, and I mean now institutional and systemic, transformation, not just, changing spaces with different faces, but real institutional and systemic change, I believe we can move the needle, farther, much farther, especially, in an economic sense. And I don't mean by that, falling into the trap of prosperity gospel, but to really see how it is that we can change systems and schemes to create broader opportunity, for individuals and families and communities to be economically sustained, and then through that, feed into the social, needs that we can share in that. Now,
while we do this, Pastor, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, just hold that thought for a second, because now we're going to get specific into the programs and with a strategy, and specifically the programs at home and in other churches that you interact with. Hold that thought 1 second. My special guest on the Hutchinson Report is Pastor Kelvin Sauls, Senior Pastor at Holman United Methodist Church. Not just a pastor in name, but a pastor indeed, in the community, active, on the front line, engaged, and also, I might say, a friend. And that to me is equally, if not more important. We'll be right back.